Thank you, Castriot. So, dear all, it is my very pleasure to virtually meet you all, and thank you for accepting our invitation to be part of this webinar. My name is Zana Sokoli. I'm a spatial urban planning advisor at UN Habitat, currently leading the municipality of Mitrovica South on behalf of our inclusive development program there. I would like to start by giving the floor to our head of office and chief technical advisor, Mr. Omar Siddiq. Omar, please.
Okay, Mir Seherdat, Dobrodošli, and welcome to all of you. Dear Kosovo Member of Parliament and Committee Chairperson, Ms. Vittoria Pazzole, respected officials from Kosovo Municipalities joining us today, Ms. Anuela Ristani, Deputy Mayor of the City of Tirana, Mr. Eric Peterson, our long-time partner from the Embassy of Sweden in Kosovo, Mr. Nicholas Sieber, who is our international traffic and mobility expert, dear colleagues, dear friends. It's really, again, a very big pleasure for me to welcome you on behalf of the United Nations Human Settlements Program in Kosovo. This is, as was mentioned, the second in a series of webinars concerning sustainable spatial planning in Kosovo. And today we focus on the topic of sustainable urban mobility plans. Our results in this area would really not be possible without our partnership with the Embassy of Sweden in Kosovo as part of the Inclusive Development Program implemented jointly with PAX and Community Building Mitrovica. Friends, we all know lessons from COVID-19 has shown us the recovery is an opportunity to have a fresh look at how we move and how we commute. It's really an opportunity to rethink transport from a systems approach, using resources more efficiently and addressing people's needs better. But how can we move around in smarter ways? Are we using the right mix of transport modes, or could we combine them differently to make our journeys faster, more sustainable, more efficient? There are a number of reasons why these questions concerning sustainable urban mobility matter now more than ever for Kosovo. We know that Kosovo's growing economy will cause a significant increase in transport demand, but presently many policies are focusing on cars and very little on public and non-motorized transport. We've seen estimated annual traffic growth in Kosovo of over 4%, almost 4.5%, which means the number of private vehicles on roads in Kosovo is projected to double in the next 16 years. In this scenario, congestion may be a permanent feature of the cities, pollution levels will exceed health thresholds, and greenhouse gas emissions will increase tremendously. But we have a unique opportunity to change this trajectory as Kosovo's urban transport systems have not been fully established. Colleagues, the infrastructure is yet to be built. Therefore, the time is right to implement sustainable transport measures and disrupt the present car-oriented development in Kosovo. Implementing SUMPs, Sustainable Urban Mobility Plans, is a key way of finding alternatives to private car use in cities. With their high population densities and high share of short distance trips, cities have a great potential to move towards a more sustainable transport mix, including active modes such as walking and cycling. Many of you might know that today, June 3rd, is actually the International World Bicycle Day. So what better occasion to discuss this in the context of sustainable urban mobility? Sustainable urban mobility plans can help us to make more efficient use of the existing infrastructure and reduce congestion on our busy roads. Moreover, if we plan investments through the lens of multimodality, we can focus on those projects that generate the greatest value for the transport network as a whole. Let me briefly turn now to the role of municipalities and sustainable urban mobility plans. Urban mobility is, of course, primarily the responsibility of municipal authorities. So without the knowledge of the local level, without the strong will to change things there, more sustainable mobility is not going to happen. Multimodal urban mobility solutions need careful, integrated planning. And this is why the theme of today's webinar is really topical for all of us. Multimodality requires planning mobility as a system, breaking out of silo approaches and developing nodes where people can conveniently switch between different modes. Plan for the convergence of networks, transport, and energy. By the way, I'm using the term urban mobility a lot, and I do not only mean smart cities, but also smart rural areas. Rural areas in Kosovo municipalities also need a smart and integrated approach to sustainable mobility and transport. So probably smart communities would actually be a better terminology for us to use. UN Habitat in Kosovo has been promoting SUMs for some time and has published them for the Mitrovica region. This week also, in commemoration of World Environment Day, we are launching in partnership with the Municipality of Mitrovica South, Kosovo's first ever guidelines for all municipalities to prepare sustainable urban mobility plans based very much on the European Union guidelines. And my colleagues, Zana and Modest, will give us a bit of a sneak peek on those guidelines. UN Habitat stands ready to provide support and help to exchange best practices, and the publication of the SUMP guidelines is one way of doing that. So before handing over to the next speaker, allow me again to wish you all a very enjoyable and inspiring webinar. I very much look forward to also discovering your sustainable urban mobility experiences and initiatives. And I'd like to thank especially our guests and speakers for joining us today, and the UN Habitat Kosovo team for their hard work in creating a stimulating webinar, helping us to move forward towards more sustainable and integrated urban mobility planning for Kosovo municipalities. Faleminderit, Havala, thank you. Over.
Thank you, Omar. I would like now to give the floor for some opening remarks to Mr. Eric Patterson, the Inclusive Development Program Project Manager on behalf of the Embassy of Sweden. Eric, please.
Thank you, Zana. Thank you, Omar. And good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure being here. As Zana said, I'm Eric. I work at the Swedish Embassy here in Pristina, and we are a long-standing partner of UN Habitat. And we've been working together with them in this particular program since 2017. I think during these couple of years, we have, I say we, I include myself in this, even though I'm just sort of standing on the sideline. Many plans, many important plans for the municipalities have been developed. But I think in many ways, the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan is maybe the most interesting. And I'm saying this mainly from a personal perspective, because I am, as many of us, a city dweller. I've been a city dweller all my life. I lived in different cities, but it's always been cities. And I love the outdoors, I love the countryside, but I do spend 95% of my time in cities. And being able to move around in a convenient manner, it's actually one of the most important keys to a good life, I dare to say. It's something that might sound a bit naive, but when you think about it, just being able to move around in a city is a big part of your life, whether it's going to work or if it's meeting up with your friends, taking your bike, your family out on a bike trip, or whatever it is. A lot of our activities that we do professionally and privately depend on mobility. So I think, as Omar very well highlighted, the expertise and the knowledge and the commitment from the municipalities is key in this aspect to make life better for all of us. So that's why I'm so excited to hear about the experience from Tirana and also about the SUMP that we're going to discuss today. But I think I'm going to stop there. So without further ado, I will do what donors normally do. I will just sit back, relax, and listen to the experts. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. It is really our pleasure to give the floor now to the Deputy Mayor of Tirana, Ms. Anuela Restani, who is the Deputy Mayor of Tirana and who we would like to hear some of the key achievements of Municipality of Tirana on this aspect. Please, Ms. Restani, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm very particularly happy because you guys are starting with the right foot, which is a lot better than we started here in Tirana after all these chaotic first 2 decades after communism fell, created in this place. So just to give you a little bit of a context in terms of the challenge and then how we coped with it. We only were a city of 200,000 people back in the 80s, late 80s, actually, right before the Berlin Wall fell. And then immediately after, as it also has happened in Pristina, there was this massive domestic immigration of people going from the rural areas where basically there was no more economic activity and no more economic opportunities, and moving into the city. So Tirana became the hub for everything, the place for everything, and also people needed to find immediate housing solutions. So what that meant was that everybody and everyone started to adapt to wherever they could find places. And we ended up with a massive sprawl of informal settlements, informal buildings, informal houses, informal businesses, informal sprawl, all throughout the existing backbone of a city of only 200,000, where now counts more than 1 million residents. We ended up with more than 250,000 illegal buildings, which most of them were spread beyond what was the ring road of Tirana back in the 80s. So what that meant in terms of mobility and in terms of mobility was that infrastructure now had to go after development had happened, which is not really the best way to build infrastructure after everything is all crowded in one place, because then that would mean expropriations, that would mean redesigning and readapting what would be an originally sustainable design of mobility and of roads and of accessibility to different sides of the city in order for it to work for everybody else. So back in 2015, when we entered the office here, that was the main challenge. How do you connect all of these all of these new neighborhoods? They were massive. Some of them were housed to 100,000 people, and some of them were so remote there was no transit going from those places to the center of the city. And not surprisingly, the center of Tirana, if some of you remember visited, was basically just a huge roundabout of cars where you would actually have to come to the center first and then decide where you're going, which created a massive number of cars, up to 100,000 cars going in and out every day right in the heart of the city. So obviously this picture is not a picture of a sustainable city, it's not a picture of a smart mobility city, is not a picture of a livable city when you think of it. At the core of every local administration, transportation is the #1 solution. But the error we usually make is tackle that as a separate issue when it's not. It's the entirety of how you're planning a city that provides for the backbone of your sustainable mobility plan. And why I'm saying that is, yes, when we got here, there had to be some easy grabbing fruit that we needed to start on. And some of the things that we know so far, despite what studies or despite what any major enterprise that requires time and resources and effort does, is that, well, if you are going to create a livable space, then you are going to prioritize people versus cars. And when I say that, it's a little bit counterintuitive, because you're saying, well, the cars do serve people. So, your colleagues mentioned here that Kosovo's numbers of private vehicles are increasing, obviously in the service of citizens. But if you do the count, and we did it here in Tirana, we found out that 200,000 cars that actually exist in Tirana today serve the same number, and pay attention to this, that 300 buses are doing in terms of moving people from A to B. We have 200,000 cars, and then we have 300 buses. And those 300 buses are doing the same work with that 200,000 cars are doing. That tells you that mobility, that's unsmart mobility, the idea or the desire to move with your own vehicle is not really working for the whole city. And in a city of 1 million, those 200,000 people shouldn't be more special than the rest. The fact that you can afford to have a car does not make you a priority citizen. The fact that you want to be alone in your car does not make you a priority citizen. The fact that you want to park your car in front of your building does not make you a priority citizen. And I always give the people the example. We removed basically all on-street parking that was in Tirana in the city center, all unpaid street parking all throughout the city. And the reason and the anger of the people was, well, where am I going to park my car? And the question is, well, when you buy a bed, do you actually ask where I'm going to put my bed? Is anybody responsible to really buy you a house so that you can put your bed? Is anybody responsible to buy you a house when you buy it, when you purchase a couch, when you purchase a refrigerator? So cars are not something that you have to buy. It's not a vehicle that you have to choose. There are a lot of other possibilities, and reason for that is, well, you know, if you're counting the segments, and I'm sure it would be similar in Pristina as well, half of the segments that people make in Tirana today are less than 1 kilometer, and 70% of them are less than 800 meters. So nobody can really tell me I would die without my car, because you wouldn't. Because 800 meters a day for anybody other than those with the disabilities, who, by the way, do not own cars at the major number, are only driving like by meters. We're measuring their distances by meters, and that is just not sustainable, and it just doesn't work. So what are some of the things we've done that have helped tackle this problem? Well, first of all, we started from the general urban plan, rather than the mobility plan on its own. What that meant is, well, the way you plan your city really decides on how you're moving around. And in our urban plan, we needed to have a stop to the sprawl. So we were discussing yesterday here with some colleagues from the World Bank, and this was this worldwide study of 268 cities, if I'm not mistaken, where the fundamental change in the world today is we're going from pancakes to pyramids, which means that if you want to create a livable, efficient city, you have to develop vertically. And this is what our plan said. For all the urban area, for all the metropolitan area of Tirana, we need to develop vertically. For the rest of it, which is going to be set by this natural wall of trees, it's called the orbital forest. If you want to develop outside the metropolitan area, if you want to live on a house on your own, there have to be some limits. You cannot build a 10-story building outside the ring road, because then if you're building a 10-story building, services would have to go there, kindergartens would have to go there with the same intensity that they go in the city. They would have to build roads to go there. They don't have to find traffic. That should just be a choice. That should not be the norm, because it's an unsustainable norm. Not just by the cities like us, who are extremely limited in our resources, but for any city. Developing horizontally instead of vertically is not city-like, is not conceived as city living. Cities are made for people to live and cohabit and work in a community, and together share the same space in a democratic way. Why I say democratic way, and I will keep saying it again, it's for the same reasons. If we're thinking of the citizens, or if we're thinking of how the cities were built in the last 15 years, they weren't necessarily considering the human being in the center of their decision. If you're urban developers, you create solutions. But then how many times do we ask ourselves, who are those solutions for? So if we're building big highways that basically cut in the middle in the city in chunks, what are we really doing for our citizens? We're not building community. We're not building interaction. We're not building economies. We are servicing a percentage of the population that has chosen a unsustainable and unmaintainable and unsmart way of moving from A to B, and that is the only percentage of population we're serving. And we're not even serving them at the end of the day, because all studies show that not moving with their bike or walking or using public transit, it's all beneficial in the end, even for the individual, even for the person who owns a car. So all that considered, and the fact that the city is being developed vertically, then you decide on the transit lines that are going through, in and out, and you have to solve that. But in addition to that, in cities like in Tirana, which has the privilege of better and milder weather than Pristina, the bike lanes were a big challenge. Why do I say the challenge instead of a success? Well, now it is a success, but the challenge rests in the sense that people were not used to giving space to bikes. And obviously, if you're buying a 30,000 car, you're thinking you're entitled to all the space in the world. Whereas, somebody who's biking on a $100 bike, they cannot afford this power. So giving people that power by protected bike lanes, and I cannot stress it enough, they have to be protected. You have to have that space, and there should be no other ways of accessing it other than with a car or as a pedestrian. Giving people that space was not very easily digestible for this loud minority that we have of people who are used to driving, who are used to having all the space possible, who are used to parking on the street, but that is completely not sustainable, and that is something that wouldn't stay. So in the beginning, when we started to build our bike lanes, and we had 0 bike lanes in Tirana, we now are counting more than 50 kilometers on a grid in the central city. People say, well, but you're building all these bike lanes, yet nobody's using them. But then people started to use them. And obviously, if you have just one bike lane that doesn't go anywhere, it's very limited. You have to connect it, and you mentioned it before, you have to connect different ways of mobility that are sustainable and they do make sense for all, not just for the few. So after the bike lanes were installed and they were connected, and then they're now connected for most of the city, we are now counting our bikers. And the last count I had, we had 300,000 bike rides in 2 of our bike lanes, separate bike lanes that we're counting electronically. And I don't know how many kilometers, I don't want to come up with a number just out of my head, but from a city that had 0 bike lanes and 0 interaction with the pedestrians, with the bikers, with anything that was human but the car at the center of attention, I think that is a huge success. But it has to start with the infrastructure, and it has to start with the plan. So our mobility plan, which is now currently being studied, and we are being assisted, I don't know if you have any representatives here by GIZ, is looking into the dedicated bus lane. So it's looking into the bus rapid transit possibility, which means for cities like us, where we do not have the space nor the affordability of big transit such as subways or trams. They're just not visible on this size of a city. The best solution and the cheapest solution is to build this dedicated bus lanes in the existing roads, in the existing infrastructure, that same as bike lanes, this does not allow for intrusion by other vehicles, by private vehicles, ensuring then the rapid movement of people through public transport. Why I say the rapid movement? Because most of the cases when people choose their own vehicle, it's just because it takes forever to take the bus. And they're right. If you have 200,000 cars going around, then obviously the bus is not going to be moving very fast. We counted that our buses, they go at only 10 kilometers per hour today. If we were to move that to not 20, not 30, not 40, but if we were to move from 10 kilometers per hour to 15 kilometers per hour, the satisfaction rate of the people using the buses would be sufficient for them to justify a doubling of the price. So can you imagine the economics of this? We are now serving 200,000 people at the speed that they want, at the rate that they want, at the distance that they want, at the space that they want, and we're not serving the same number of people, nearly 300,000, who do not own their vehicles, but who are using and who are trusting the city, the administration, and the local administration to move them from A to B. And so that democratic principle in terms of creating opportunities to move places in the city the same way, independently from your income, independently from your status, independently from the space you occupy, should be there for all. And I'll be happy to answer, specific questions about this, but I really wanted to just show you a little bit of the vision of how this should start and then should continue. And it's not like anybody has really figured it out completely, but the things we know today are create space for pedestrians, create space for bikes, and invest on your urban transport.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for giving us this background of Tirana and how you managed to deal with the new context of the city that you just mentioned, and also for explaining us this transition from traditional to more sustainable urban planning, people-oriented, but also for this approach you have on compact cities, like as a solution for urban sprawl. That's also our problem in Kosovo, not only in Pristina, but also in other cities. So thank you really for your presentation. I would like now to give the floor to Vittore Pazzoli. Vittore, he's a member of the parliament and chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture, Forestry, Rural Development, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure. Vittore, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zana, and thank you, Omar, for inviting me to take part in this great discussion. So I've got some experience, like for years I've been as a chief of staff in the mayor's cabinet in Pristina, and I know the problem that Pristina faces. But as Zana said, that the problem is not only in Pristina, we do have the problem with mobility all around Kosovo. So the reform of urban mobility system is one of the biggest challenges that we face here in Kosovo. We need to work on transforming our cities into livable cities that are accessible to all and well connected. So now what we can see, what is happening in the world, especially in developed countries, they are making fundamental changes within their mobility system. So this is happening within a relatively very short period of time, and the development of technology in mobility is unprecedented. And we have to move on to catch with the development that is happening all around Europe. Developed countries, compared to what we've done until now, they are investing now in different means of transport, in means that do not make our journeys faster, but to make them safer, easier, and more comfortable, accessible, and affordable. So, we have to change into that direction. We do not need to invest on highways to make our transport faster, but we need to make our transport cleaner, safer, and quieter, and also comfortable and accessible and affordable for everyone. So recent developments in technology and advances in data science has made it easier for city planners and also for policymakers, and this has offered us a chance to really look at what are our needs and what are the best policies that we can adopt, and that suits best our cities and our needs. Now we have opportunity to transform the travel in our cities, and also to decide on what kind of cities we want, what kind of changes we want, and what do we want these changes that we introduce to deliver. It is time for us to rethink our urban spaces, and also the way how people in our country and goods move from one city to another. So it is time to, because not just we're saying that, but it is the significant demographic and economic trends that are pressuring us for change in Kosovo. So what we're going to do in the committee, as the chair of this committee, we cover transport as well, and mobility is one of the things that we're going to focus, and we're going to work quite closely with the ministry as well, because the government has produced some policy initiatives that they're going to take that will somehow change the way how cities operate and the way how cities change their mobility in a better way to make our cities more affordable and accessible to everyone. So I will start with the first one. What we want to do is we're trying to make our transport system more inclusive. So as I said in the beginning, we need to change our cities in affordable cities, in cities that are accessible, and in a transport that somehow offers a chance for everyone to have the possibility to travel from one point to another without having the need to have lots of money. So this will reduce the inequalities in transport use, because we still have cities that do not have public transport, and people are somehow obliged, or they need to use different forms of transport. To some extent, they are not even safe, and they also need to save lots of money to buy a car, because they don't have a bus that goes from their home to their workplace, or other routes that they have to take. So this would be one step. Integrated transport system is one of the priorities that the government has, but also the parliament will have, my committee has. When we say integrated transport system, we mean that we need an integrated transport system that includes public transport system that we have in some cities, private ones that operate, some operate in Pristina and others in other cities. And also the connection. We need to connect our cities with a public transport, with an integrated transport. For example, if you want to travel, if you're a young person, you don't have a job, but you want to travel from your city, let's say Jakova is your city, and you come to Pristina, it costs you €4. When you come to to Pristina bus station, to the main bus station, you have to get outside of the bus station to walk to some distance and get another bus that takes you to the city center, and you have to pay another 40 or 50 cents. So 4.50 is quite €4.50 is quite a lot for a young person that doesn't work and that wants to come to Pristina to carry on with his activities or her activities and things like he wants or she wants to do. So if we connect cities with an interconnected or integrated transport system, and we introduce an integrated ticket, and if we lower the price of transport, then we offer the chance to citizens to somehow get rid of their cars and not use their cars quite often, because if we leave it the way as it is cheaper to travel from Jakova to Pristina by car and easier rather than get a bus or a public transport. We will work also on modernization and development of railway infrastructure. So Kosovo has a railway system which is not developed is not that developed, but what has happened during after the war and until now, that infrastructure has not developed, but has somehow the use of it has decreased because there has not been investment in the railway infrastructure. So the country has paid the money there, but the management has not been as it should have been. And what I've understood, like recently, recently, in 2007, there were 415,000 people that used the trains to travel around around Kosovo. But what happened now, like in 2018, that number of citizens that use trains to travel around Kosovo reduced to 120,000 people. And then in 2020, it went down to 58,000 people. And this is, for me, is something that we should not have allowed to happen. We should immediately intervene in this infrastructure and make our trains available to people, because we need to reduce the number of cars that we use in the country, and we need to integrate also a bus system and also with the train system in order to offer our citizens means to travel around the country in how to say, in a more affordable ways and easier ways to get around. So and what we have now, we have only 4 trains in operation. Imagine, you know, we need to, it's because the government before, like after the war and until now, the focus has been on the road transport. So they've invested a lot in highways. They invested quite a lot on building roads instead of creating other mobility ways to travel. So or other means of transport. For example, I heard that Deputy Mayor of Tirana mentioned the cycling lanes. The same has happened in Kosovo. So the cycling lanes are not connected. You have one cycling lane from one part to another, and it's like, let's say, 50 meters or less than that. But when that is not connected, and as soon as you start to ride your bike, and then you have to get off your bike and cross the road or move it because there is a barrier there, because since it is not connected, that doesn't make sense. So most of cyclists will be somehow discouraged to use their bikes. I use my bike here in Pristina, and I face lots of difficulties, and I see lots of problems that we have. But the problem cannot be solved in a way just like seeing, okay, let's fix this road. We have to see it in a more holistic way. We have to see how we connect buses, how we connect trains, how we connect bike lanes, and how we offer our citizens sidewalks, because in Kosovo we don't have enough sidewalks, enough spaces for citizens to walk safely and to go from one point to another. So we have to have a plan as a government, and together with cities, to produce a holistic approach. How do we see our cities? What do we want our cities to look like in the future? One measure that the government will take is the 4th grant for municipalities. So the government has introduced another grant, and this grant that will be given to municipalities, it would be given to, especially in projects that are linked to infrastructure, and we will restrict this into building green infrastructure, offering sidewalks and cycling lanes as well. So this would somehow help municipalities to develop their mobility system, and also investing quite a lot in public transport, in buses and other means. Another step that we would push forward, Parliament and also the government, is to introduce cleaner forms of transport and reduce the dependency on car ownership. And we know that cities around Europe are moving towards cleaner cities, cleaner cars, like including those vehicles that are zero-emission vehicles. For Kosovo, it would be difficult to move to that direction, but we have ways that we can decide to choose. For example, if we give, how to say, incentives to people or to businesses that want to introduce these types of cars into their businesses, or private citizens that want to use these zero-emission vehicles. So we'll see what incentives we have in place and what we can offer to make people buy those cars and not use the cars that produce quite a lot of emission. One problem that I want to raise here is that what we found in 2016 in Pristina, it was that the petrol that was used to heat schools, and we were sure that was used to in the cars as well, it was that it contained 800 ppms. We measured it in a company in Italy, and we were shocked to hear that, because within the European Union, the directive of the European Union allows the petrol should contain a maximum 10 ppm. In our country, we have petrol that is not petrol. It is considered as gas oil, according to this company in Italy, and it contains 800 ppms that in European Union can be used only in ship industry. So now what the government has done has taken the control of the quality of petrol. So the state now, the ministry is responsible to oversee the quality of petrol, and this would somehow reduce the amount of CO2 emission from cars, that if we make sure that we have a higher quality of petrol that is used in cars. And yes, and this in order to reduce the amount of cars, we need to introduce the sidewalks, and also to invest in our sidewalks and introduce lots of cycling lanes in order to make people use bikes instead of cars, especially on short journeys. And yes, these are some of the steps that the Parliament, my committee, would focus quite a lot in changing and also introducing new laws that will ease up or make it easier for municipalities and also for the government to push some of the initiatives that I just mentioned. We're quite behind when it comes to mobility, to modernizing our mobility, but if we start now, we can make a good change in our country. Thank you. I'll stop here. And I just have to let you know, I informed Fiola, I will have to leave at 11 o'clock because I have another Zoom, and it's quite important for my committee, and I cannot stay longer.
Thank you, Vittore. We're actually quite happy to hear that the new government has this readiness on cooperating with municipalities on developing sustainable forms of mobility, precisely on what you just mentioned that Kosovo needs. With our inclusive development program, we have been pioneering a SUMP process in Mitrovica South and Mitrovica North as our partner municipalities within our inclusive development program. We're going to give a presentation on the process we have been going through, and I'm going to share the presentation with my colleague, Modest Goshi, who is a spatial and urban planning advisor at UN Habitat, currently leading the municipality of Mitrovica North within the inclusive development program. So we as UN Habitat are really pleased to have been able to support our partner municipalities with the pioneering of the first SUMPs in the northern region. The general context of both Mitrovicas is quite interesting. It's a flat area. More than 50% of the population is younger than 30. So this means a bigger request for working places, working opportunities, more need for entertainment and attraction, more need for parking in public spaces. And this indeed has been the motivation for developing such a plan. The deputy mayor mentioned that they didn't start with a mobility plan, but they first had to see the overall city plan. Precisely that is exactly what also happened in both Mitrovicas. We were undergoing at the same time with a municipal development plan, which is the key document of the municipalities. So our objectives and everything related to infrastructure and to mobility is also reflected on the MDP. So municipal development plan. The novelty of this process has been the transition from traditional forms of planning, of engineering planning, where the focus always was on the core and accommodating cars into the streets, into sustainable planning, where the focus primarily is on human beings and on sustainable mode of transportation. Some of the key measures anchored in our SAMs for both Mitrovicas are, of course, a regional public transport system, urban public transport system. The main problem cities in Kosovo face parking, so we have also developed a parking management, a concept for the city center, managing the road infrastructure and the traffic, bicycle strategy, and traffic safety. The bad thing, or let's say the main challenges of this process is on the implementation of the plans would be the budget issues. So for example, for both Mitrovicas, some drafted through the support we give with the current program we have there. The next phases of municipalities would be to create an implementation and monitoring team. This requires expertise, this requires additional financial resources and human resources. And of course, the biggest challenge is the limited funding for implementing the measures. As a process, it's been quite a detailed process. We have started from scratch, let's say, with a preparatory phase, and we have undergone a lot of steps together with our municipal counterparts, stakeholders, different surveys with general public and target groups, field recordings, workshops with stakeholders to be able to come up with a concept proposal for how these cities should develop in terms of mobility. We are happy that today, as we speak, we have the plan or the SAMP of Mitrovica South. We have the draft plan of Mitrovica North, which is yet to be approved at the Municipal Assembly. And we are also very proud of what Omar mentioned at the beginning, that through this process, we have managed to also draft some national guidelines on drafting SAMPs for other Kosovo municipalities. Modest?
Zana, thank you very much. I will continue now. During the process of drafting Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, I want to inform you that I wasn't surprised with the findings, because the findings that they are facing citizens from Mitrovica North and Mitrovica South, it's not that it's same also in other municipalities in Kosovo, but on what we were focused, and when we raised the question, what we are going to do next, what are our next steps, how we are going to organize the efficient bus transport, how we are going to use in maximum opportunities that we have in Mitrovica South and Mitrovica North, and that is the railways, how we are going to manage that, where is going to be the station for business, station for passengers, etc., etc. But also how we are going to link a special planning with mobility, with special emphasis with city center of both cities in Mitrovica North and Mitrovica South. Should it be open for pedestrian and closer for vehicle, and how we are going to organize? This is very important, how we are going to link mobility also with special planning. But another issue or question raised is parking management. Are we going to build parking garage? Are we going to make a parking with payment? Which kind of methodology we are going to use? With good practices we are going to take from a development country and to implement? So many questions raised, but these question raised are not dedicated only for Mitrovica South and Mitrovica North, but this question will need to be raised also in other municipalities in Kosovo. Next, Zana, please. As Zana mentioned a little about the process, we did also not only researches in the field. We didn't want to be too much technical, but also we wanted to be in qualitative aspect when we did a survey, household survey, and when we identify a lot of stakeholders, and we organize online questionnaire, but not only online questionnaire, but also we had a face-to-face or physical interview with many group of interest. And what is very interesting, at the end we got some results. As you can see, in Mitrovica South, most of the citizens, they are still using the vehicle as a transport, and bicycle, there are only 8% of them that they are using to move from point A to point B. Next, Zana. Also, based on the results of the research and survey, we can see that, example, in this case, in Mitrovica North, this is the main problems that we identify, but not only that they are facing with a problem that are dedicated to the traffic, but this is also in link or somehow in line also with some other social problems that traffic or movement or mobility is creating in Mitrovica North. But this is not only Mitrovica North, but same results we can find also in Mitrovica South. Next. Regarding to the results of research that we did in the field, we can see that, example, this is a map of movement of pedestrian. We can see that Mitrovica North is going in a line with more active move city, more than passive move. But we can see that a lot of pedestrians are preferring to move in the city than using vehicles. But the problem is places when most of the pedestrians are walking. Are they safe? Do we need to do other urban design to make it safer, to improve it? But what is very important, based on the data that we get from the research and surveys in the field, sustainable urban mobility plan for Mitrovica North, at least I can say, is somehow it's giving a direction of municipal development plan that Mitrovica North is going to be a 15-minute city in the next of 10 years. Yes, Dana, please, next. But in Mitrovica South, we have a road network load map. As you can see from this map and information that we gather from the field, we can see that the center part of the city, it's with a heavy traffic, while in other part of the city, as you can see in the transit roads, they are not used too much by vehicles. So this is very important to check and to go through the good practices and to see how we can solve the problems and how we can make what is going to be priority with the center part of the city. Yes, Anna? One of the, let's say, major phases or important phases of the process of sustainable urban mobility plan is organizing 2 workshops workshops with a stakeholder. First workshop was dedicated for situation analysis for when jointly Mitrovica South and Mitrovica North, they sit together and separately they work on sustainable urban mobility plan, when they presented some principles, main problems, short and long-term goals, and of course, state of the vision for sustainable urban mobility plan. The second workshop was dedicated to develop the development framework. Again, it was jointly Mitrovica South and Mitrovica North. They worked separately with 2 sustainable urban mobility plan, and when they agree for a long-term process, measures, activity, responsibilities, etc. Yes, Anna? What are key strategic approach for Mitrovica North? Based on the draft sustainable urban mobility plan for Mitrovica North, they are really focused to develop the regional public transport system, and of course to develop the concept for the city center, since they are aiming to be a 15-minute city in the next 10 years. Also, they are interesting to promote as much as they can active move, such as a bicycle to develop the bicycle strategy, and also to start to develop the urban public transport system. Also, it is very important to continue, because if they want to develop one model of a sustainable urban mobility plan, also they need to think about the parking management and also to increase the traffic safety. In Mitrovica North, for the moment, it's a situation about the safety in the traffic. It's very good, but this doesn't mean that we need to keep it this way, but we need to work to implement the activity to increase more traffic safety. But it doesn't mean that moving all the cars from the city we have a solution. We are aware of that, so that we need to implement also some activity and a project related to the road infrastructure and traffic management. And at the end, we need to think how we are going to strengthen the mobility as a policy inside of Mitrovica North municipality. This means that we need to create the working team and to increase the human capacity and knowledge related to the sustainable urban mobility plan. Yes, Anna?
So yeah, so yes, also for Mitrovica South, we have some package of measures on which the municipality now needs to work on the implementation phase. Of course, like Niklas likes to say, municipalities do not stop at their borders. So a regional approach is the right thing to do, especially when Mitrovica is kind of the capital of the northern region. So it should also be seen as a regional leader and promoter of development. So having a regional public transport system is one of the key measures that the Mitrovica South is going to work on. As you have seen from the previous maps, the city center is quite congested. So with the new set of rules of managing the city center, we came up to the conclusion that it is what is going to help be released from the car, given back to the citizens, and we would also use more the transit roads on the outskirts of the city. Having a strategy on using bicycles as a form of sustainable transportation is also one of the key strategies for the future for Mitrovica South, especially also for the fact that the city is quite flat. So using bicycles as mode of transportation is a good and sustainable solution for them. Of course, parking is one of the main problems in our cities in Kosovo. So we are also developing a parking management. Also having a traffic safety strategy to create a safer environment for the citizens living there is one of the key approaches we're having, and we're also been working on how to structure in the future the process, because the process of sustainable urban mobility planning does not stop at you have the plan and that's it. I mean, the main phase is now with the implementation, with the funding, with the collaboration with neighboring municipalities and different stakeholders. So we are looking forward to that. Just to change the slide. Yeah. What Omar mentioned at the beginning, one of the things that we're really proud of is that we have been managing through developing this process in Mitrovica South, Mitrovica North, but also having into consideration the EU guidelines, UN Habitat guidelines, and other references. We have managed to draft the national guidelines on sustainable urban mobility planning, also by seeing that many cities in Kosovo do not have the human capacities and expertise on developing such processes that are also new for the Kosovo context. It is a methodology, a step-by-step methodology that would help municipalities on having their plans. We have explained there everything. I mean, it's so easy to use the guidelines that you just need to have the people who are experts on this, and then you sit and follow the steps on drafting the plans. We are going to launch the guidelines on the 5th in Mitrovica South, where we have this World Environment Day activity. So after that, of course, the guidelines will be online for the public and also for other municipalities to have them. So to end this presentation, I would also like to give some keywords for the discussion that will happen after. As I mentioned earlier, one of the key challenges of municipalities is the limited government funding, be it national or local. Here it is very important, the external funding support. What Mitrovica South and Mitrovica North will be facing next is investment plan. They need to define investment plan, monitoring team, have leaders for each of the projects that they are going to implement. So they will look forward also with us, with our support, to consider the role of public-private partnership on reactivating the public transport, having a new bike infrastructure, manage parking spaces, etc. So yeah, this would be the presentation. I would like to give the floor to Dragana on having the feedback from our municipalities. But as I heard, Alan O'Brien from EIB needs to leave, and if he's still here, maybe we can quickly give the floor to him. So, and then we move on with the municipalities. Alan, are you here?
I think Alan already left because he had another meeting to attend.
Okay, so I give the floor to Dragana. Dragana, please.
Okay, hello to all from my side. My name is Dragana Milutinovic. I'm a special urban planner associate for the Mitrovica North Municipality. And let me introduce to you our representatives from municipalities of North and South Mitrovica, our SAMP coordinators, who will share their experience of the process with us. So from Mitrovica North Municipality, we have Mr. Boro Markovic, who is Officer for Inspection from Department of Public Services, Infrastructure and Investment, and Mr. Mehmet Bayrami, who is Head of Public Services at South Mitrovica Municipality. So, Mr. Boro, can you share with us what was the difficulties you encountered during the drafting process of SAMP?
Greetings to all. Thank you, Dragana, for the presentation. We have faced with a lot of difficulties when we started the development of this plan. I will start from the first and the most important challenge. We had problem with the lack of data, and we had problem to collect such data. As many of you know, there are institutions in the North Mitrovica that are not open for cooperation, so we had a lot of difficulties to collect data. As well as other projects, we always were faced with the lack of financing. The next point that I would like to emphasize is the capacity of the municipality. The capacity of the municipality is very low regarding this plan, and our engagement during the drafting of this plan, the time that we needed to draft this plan was very difficult because we had a lack of capacity. In order to resolve this problem, this lack of capacity, we engaged NGOs that work in the area of traffic, which helped us in the development of this plan. The process of development of this plan was inclusive, and that is why it was very challenged for us. And as Modest emphasized during his presentation, we succeeded to put the human in front of, in the center of this plan.
Just a second. Okay. Mr. Bayrami, can you share with us how this process affected your work, collaboration with other departments and institutions, for example, fire stations, police, CSOs, taxi services, and other associations which were included in the process.
First, I wanted to thank you all. I'm glad that I'm present here with you to present a great work that was done on Salt Mitrovica Municipality. The process of drafting the SUMP, in addition that it was an interest for the municipality, a special interest to have a greater access of citizens in leading the process that contributed in our capacity building within the staff of the municipality to be ready to draft plans and projects in the future. So the municipal staff was trained to put forward the process of the planning process by own forces, by thanking UN Habitat and their team that did a great job. And I can see here this meeting, I can see the great work that we done, Zana, and we are model for the whole Kosovo. Even though we consider that the plans in practice, or the usual practice in different cities beyond, but for Kosovo is something new. And we can say that SUMP for Mitrovica is a modern plan, which is compared to European countries by thinking the seriousity of the work of UN Habitat and professional experts engaged. And we did a plan, which I believe that soon you will see that it will be substantial for the city of Mitrovica. We mentioned that during other conversations or discussions, we are willing to share the best practices with other municipalities of Kosovo in order that to draft a sustainable urban plan. We have also the new component, the investment for capital investment plan. We are very happy that by that we achieved to have these plans based on the community. We hope that we will implement this capital investment, which derived from the mobility plan. I want to say that we never stop. And in continuous cooperation with UN Habitat, we created working groups, and we created municipal regulations which are very necessary deriving from the mobility plan. We are finalizing together with the railway of Kosovo, jointly with them, to create a new bus station, which will be very interesting for citizens to have an easier approach to interconnect the railway station with bus station, the urban station within the city, inside the city. So, Miss, I don't know whether Miss Vittoria Pazzoli is here still, but we made a request that for the needs that are deriving from the mobility plan, it is a responsibility of government to support us and to be developed as is foreseen with everything else. So I want to say that with the directorate of the railway, we are finalizing the finding common or a joint module to have same interconnection between bus station and train station, and we hope that it will be finalized as soon as possible and be appropriate. So we drafted the urban transport regulations inside the city, and we are expecting, waiting to the public discussion to be completed and to be sent in assembly, and to envisage that the most heavy places of the city be relieved from individual taxis and to have a greater public transport, and to see that taxi operator to have their own points in order to not create a confusion or to create a heavy loading of the city. And we also made cycling lanes inside the city. We were together with the mayor and the director of public services, and the supply of cycling lanes will be done as soon as possible. And we also started with the Kosovo police, started an activity that will last. Also, we made the sideways for citizens, but maybe I took too long near Poe. However, this is very few comparing on what we did. So thank you for the contribution. If you have any question, feel free to ask. Thank you very much, and I hope that the support will not miss in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bayrami. Mr. Boro, what do you see or what challenges do you expect in the process of implementing the plan?
Well, of course, the challenges are always present during the implementation of the plan. Basic challenge that we expect are the finance. We always encounter this problem during the implementation. Also, the challenge is the implementation itself, how this will look on the field in a few years, because in some 5 years, we see our town with the less cars. We have a car parked on the sidewalks, but easily we started to resolve this problem, because you cannot resolve the problem of cars during the night. We also implemented some public parking garages. We also have in plan to build another public parking garage, and we are trying to provide as much space as we can for the pedestrians, for the people with disabilities, in order for them to be easier to access to institutions. We also thought to, from the central part of the city, to remove the traffic as much as we can, considering that our city is not a large city in the terms of area, in terms of surface area. The surface area of the city is 5 square kilometers. The central city is surface area of the central city is about 1 kilometer. So we really want to expand and to, how do I say, release this central part of the city. Our city is a small city, and we have cases where people go with a car to go from the point which is 500 meters away from their home, and that creates a lot of gas emissions. And we also want to achieve a greener city. We want our city to be more arranged, and those are the challenges that are wait for us in the future. Currently, we are working on the development. If you remember, I speak to those which I spoke before. We work on the bridge, which would release the traffic from the center of the city. That is our one of our priorities, and that is one good thing that will be implemented in the future. If you have any more questions, please, I am at your disposal.
Thank you, Mr. Boro. For Mr. Bayrami, what do you consider as the biggest issue that your municipality is facing when it comes to the mobility? Actually, maybe you already gave the answers for this question. So what do you think is your biggest strength?
The main challenge is the funding, financing, the financial means to support the findings deriving from the mobility plan. There are a lot of road access that will be open inside the city when we envisage the blocking of the center of the city. Then the high number of vehicles and according to the plan, it is envisaged to have 2 or 3 public parking to overcome the overburden of the city, and it is depending from donors, external donors, because there are multi-million projects to be envisaged within the mobility plan, and we hope that within 10 years we will enjoy this project and to finalize it as good as possible.
Thank you very much. And one more question for Mr. Boro. When it comes to mobility, how do you see your city and your municipality in next 5 years?
Thank you, Dragana. As I already said in my previous presentation, the municipality of Mitrovica, the surface area of municipality of Mitrovica is not very big. So in the near future, I see Mitrovica with less cars on the streets, and I see Mitrovica as the city of 15 minutes. I think that is very important for the city, considering the current congestion with which the municipality is currently facing. I also see the municipality as a more cleaner, is a more greener, with less emissions, and I see the municipality as better for the life of its inhabitants. The municipality is, if I can say, the capital for 4 Serbian municipalities in the north. And I believe that we also have the support of those municipalities. We have a very good team that supports us. We also have UN Habitat, which is supporting us, so I believe that we will achieve. I would also like to thank to Mr. Nicholas, who I met personally, and thank you very much for your support.
Thank you very much to our speakers, Mr. Boro Markovic and Mr. Mehmet Bayrami from our 2 respective municipalities. Zana.
Thank you, Dragana. Thank you, Boro and Mehmet, for your feedback. I would like to give now the floor to Fiol Saka for managing the interactive discussion with our guests. Fiol, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm a spatial and urban planning associate in UN Habitat, and it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Niklas Zieber, who is also a senior expert for transport and environment, mainly focused on sustainable transportation. He comes from Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, but he was also involved as an international mobility expert in developing and supporting the whole process for both the sumps of Mitrovica South and Mitrovica North. We heard both the municipalities, the local and the central government stances, and we all understand that sustainable transportation and mobility is a key component towards sustainable development. However, while it might be easier to develop a plan, it's always more difficult to implement it. And the citizens always see the results of that plan once its measures are actually implemented and put to use for the citizens. We're talking about public transport systems, integrated bus stations, more biking lanes, more walkable communities, and whatnot. So, Mr. Niklas, could you please let us know that what should the local authorities do to implement these measures? How can they be tangible, and how can they be constructed, or what are the ways of implementing such measures? What kind of finances are needed, and what kind of support countries with less economic resources like Kosovo can do to achieve funds for financing these measures of sums?
Thank you very much for inviting me for this interesting workshop, and I'm happy to see that the plans which we have been doing in Mitrovica North and South are developing, and so you can see impacts that are progressing. Now, first of all, I want to say Kosovo is not the only country in the world with these types of problems. So everywhere around the world, we have the same type of problem, the focus on roads and cars. And even in Germany, we have these types of problems. We're having emission problems still with especially particulate emissions. We have a lot of problems with noise emissions. And the largest problems right now we have to keep to the climate goals. So we are having steadily constant CO2 emissions, even though we are doing a lot of programs. So these are definitely transport with regards to climate change is the worst sector, worst performing sector compared to all the other sectors, which are performing much better, especially the energy sector. So this is something that, first of all, I think it is especially needed that there is a political will to change this. And we can see this from many countries in the world where changes have happened. If I show you the pictures like how the Netherlands looked before and after they changed, you will see it's a tremendous change which took place. But however, there is a political will needed, plus there is a good planning needed. So if you combine this two, then this, and I can tell you maybe later on if you ask me about this, what would be the good standards for a sustainable mobility plan. Okay, you want to have more discussion on this issue? Or
maybe if you could let us know some possible ways of financing sums, like what are means of reaching for funds and implementing these large-scale investments.
First of all, I think you need the political the will, and you need a good planning concept, and then later on, once you present this, then you can go for funding. So my main idea is that the municipalities in Kosovo develop sustainable urban mobility plans and ask international donors to finance this. And of course, Kosovo government must make a counter financing for this as well as the communities. They must also plan for counter financing these plans. Now, first of all, I think it's important that what you have already done in Kosovo, you have set up the standards. What should a sustainable urban mobility plan contain? Which are the main features of a sustainable urban mobility plan? And in the discussions, we heard something already, which Anuela Ristani, she said from Tirana, what she had been doing. This is, for example, you're not focusing on one solution. You're not focusing, these bus systems will be the solution or bicycles will be the solution. But you have to take all modes into consideration. So this would be an intermodal approach. And then you can not only focus on transport, but you have to focus as well on urban development. So where, in case you have an urban sprawl, like I've seen, which on the route between Pristina and Mitrovica, there was uncontrolled settlements. And once you have these uncontrolled settlements or urban sprawl, then you will have problems, because these are settlements which are designed for cars and very difficult to serve with public transport. So there must be an integration not only between the modes of transport, but as well between the urban planning or the regional planning. Because as Sana quoted me, right, thank you, Sana, the town doesn't stop as this municipal border, but there are a lot of commuters coming in and out, and we have to serve for that. So what would be the first thing which Kosovo can contribute is to produce valuable and very well defined sustainable urban mobility plans, which means not only for the urban area, but for the region would be best. So it would be Mitrovica North, Mitrovica South, and the surrounding areas. That you can include the commuters. So there are 6 steps for, I think, which are essential for a good sustainable urban plan, mobility plan. First of all, which I said already, the political decision must be made. And that I was very happy to hear the speech from Vittore Paccioli, which said, oh, yes, we are dedicated in Kosovo to do this. So once the political decision is made, not only on the central level, but also on the community level, then you can commonly develop goals. Which goals do we have? We want to stick to the Paris Climate Agreement. We want to reduce pollution thresholds below UN health thresholds. We want to have a larger number of commuters. We want to have an efficient goods transport. All these goals can be developed. This is the second step. And the third step would be then, once you have agreed upon these goals, you decide which measures would maybe contribute to this. And probably you will have to take all possible measures. And then once you decided upon these measures, then there comes the calculation, because you really have to find out, do these measures really help? Do they really contribute to the goals which we have? If we don't contribute to the goals, then we have to refine the measures which we do. And once you have done this and you have agreed upon, then this is the part 1 of the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan. And here, at this point, the international donors come in. And then you come to the point of implementation. You need to do feasibility studies, and you need to implement, build bus stations and buy buses and reduce traffic congestion with measures, some of us. And the 6th step, which is the last step of this sump, is you monitor. You find out, have these implementations been taking place? And have they produced the results we wanted them to produce? So once the results were not good enough, you go back to the measures and say, we need to do additional measures, and we need to find other money to finance this. This would be, once you have established this good system, and you have a surveillance about this, a monitoring of the whole procedure as well, I think then donors would be willing to come in. And my proposal for Kosovo would be then to set up a national fund for sustainable urban mobility, which means that we have a fund where donors are paying in, but as well Kosovo, the state of Kosovo is contributing, and the communities are contributing. And with this fund, we would finance the sustainable urban mobility plans with the standards I have described before, and we would also finance the implementation of this. And in between, we will have a lot of steps which control that the plans are set up in a right manner, that the implementation is done well up to international standards, that the tendering procedures are according to international standard principles, and so forth. And the fund should do this control, and there should be also an external auditing which looks at the fund, that the money which is provided is spent adequately and efficiently. This would be the main idea. So to resume it, do good planning, ask international donors for funding, and then control what you're doing, what you have been doing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sieber. You, I think, already went over some of the questions also posted on our Facebook page. And since we already went over time, we promised that we will respond to all our questions directly on Facebook. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Siddiq to wrap up the SUMP webinar.
Wow, thank you all. This was really a very rich discussion, and I think that we could continue discussing all day, and we did go over time. But some key highlights from my side was the importance of taking a regional approach, not only looking at municipal transport, but connecting it to the broader functional view of the city beyond the boundaries, connecting things like railways and other types of regional transport infrastructure, as well as connecting it very much to the spatial planning. I think this is really key because mobility not only affects transportation, but it affects economic dimensions of life in the city, social as well as environmental outcomes. And I think it's important to stress that because many of the greenhouse gas emissions that we see are coming from this sector. So we want to accelerate action towards the Paris climate goals. Also, I find that the creation of the SUMP plans can be quite intimidating. The data collection challenge can be vast, but local government cannot do everything, and it's important, and the methodology that we employed in Mitrovica shows this. The partnerships with the community, the partnerships with the private sector can help to develop the plan, but then it shouldn't stop at the plan. And we need to not only co-produce the knowledge for the plan with partners and stakeholders, but also co-implement some of these solutions, whether this is crowd financing for bike lanes, whether this is working at different levels of government to create an enabling environment for financing the implementation of the plan. This is really important. And we really do hope that one day Kosovo can realize this ambition at a national scale and set up a SUMP fund for all municipalities so we can really scale up our efforts on this topic. I'd like to again thank all of you for sticking with us despite the additional time that this webinar took. If you would like additional information on UN Habitat's work on sustainable urban mobility planning, you can go to our website, which is www.unhabitat-kosovo.org. As my colleagues mentioned, visit our website often because this Saturday for World Environment Day, we will be putting there the English version of the National SUMP Guidelines for Kosovo, which is very exciting. We'll be having a cycling mayor's event in Mitrovica South to promote green mobility solutions. And then we will have the Serbian and Albanian versions shortly uploaded to that site as well. So keep in touch with us, continue to comment in the Facebook Live field, and we will get in touch with you. And I wish you all a very happy World Bicycle Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar, and thanks to all you present in this meeting, but also to those who attended us on Facebook. I would like to declare this meeting over, and I hope we can keep this communication after and be this webinar only the beginning of a discussion in Kosovo. Thank you.
Goodbye.